Going live. Excellent. See some attendees coming in already. Welcome you all to tonight's Astronomy in the City. We'll wait a bit longer for other participants to join as well. I'll keep an eye on the live channels of Astronomy in the City. Yeah, I see some participants also live on the YouTube stream. Welcome you all. As we wait for more participants to join the Zoom call, I will remind you that we will take questions also from the YouTube message box. So don't feel obliged to join us in the Zoom call. You can stay on YouTube and enter your questions there. We will keep an eye on them, on the comments, and we'll try to respond to all of them if possible. Again, feel free to ask us any astronomical question that you might have, any curiosity, even if it covers what astronomy entails in terms of University of Birmingham. So if you have questions on the courses, we are well covered with our experts on different expertise and different also levels of expertise, so we can provide you hopefully answers to all your questions. I see that we have 29 viewers in the stream of the live session, which is great. I see 9. Yeah, we have 9 participants to the Zoom call, so the numbers are encouraging. We are very happy to have you all here with us, even in virtual form, and hopefully we'll be able to bring back to you soon the live Astronomy in the City, as we all know and love. I'll take the time now to start introducing who are the panelists with us here tonight. We've seen the talks from Oscar Wright, so the equipment manager of Astro. Unfortunately cannot be here tonight, but we have the main speaker, Natalie. She's a first-year PhD student that joined recently the Birmingham group, the gravitational wave side of the astronomy group in Birmingham. So if you have any question on her very interesting talk on JWST, please feel free to ask her. Also, I see Simon Wooding is a third-year physics student and outreach officer of the Astro. So he's very experienced. He's been a staple of Astronomy in the City. So feel free to ask him all the questions regarding the sky this month, even on some equipment. He's been an equipment officer before at Astro. He is particularly knowledgeable about that. We have also the chair of Astro, Amwesha, another third-year physics student of Birmingham. We also have behind me, in this rather odd perspective, I apologize, we are lacking chairs. The director of the observatory, Matt Nichol, is a lecturer at the University of Birmingham. So he's here with his bag of experience to answer all your more complicated questions. And I'm a postdoc. I'm Matteo. I work on extragalactic. Matt is particularly experienced on supernova physics. I cover more of the extragalactic side of things, distant galaxies, and how they sort of evolve together in galaxy groups and clusters. I feel the participation is still increasing, which is very nice. I appreciate the first comment from Shaz. It's nice to hear that there are 3 of you watching with us tonight. So in a second, we'll open the Q&A, so load your question. Meanwhile, I'll switch on to my phone to give you a quick a quick and hopefully interesting view of our newly refurbished telescope. So I'll switch to the other view. Welcome you all. I hope you can all see our control room. So this is the business side of the telescope, where we control what the...
Matteo, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I think it's using the audio from your computer, so I think our attendees on YouTube will not be able to see you.
Oh, I can see the computer, Matteo.
Oh no, actually I can do this, and hopefully...
I think that's fixed, yes.
Hopefully this works. Thank you, Amwesha, for the heads up. So as I was saying, this is the controls of the telescope, where we select which object to observe and effectively where to point the telescope, but we'll come back to that in a second. What I want to show you without further ado is the telescope itself. Here it is in a rather jaunty angle for you to see its structure. You're entering with me into the dome, the newly refurbished dome, or the ones of you that have been here before. It's a hemispherical structure that is designed to keep the telescope sort of safe from the environment, especially when it rains, obviously, but also during observations. It's designed so that the telescope can look outside through a window big enough for it to collect all the lights that it needs, but without being disturbed, for instance, wind. We know that turbulence, and air turbulence in particular, is detrimental to the quality of the images. And you can see here the slit through which the telescope observes. We are able to control its opening, and if you bear with us for a second, we'll open it for you so we can highlight how this works. Yeah. We have here Matt to open the shutter.
So incidentally, roller first, sorry.
It's a very engaging activity, very glamorous as well. Health and safety checked.
So one of the help out here.
Wait, I'll.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. Yeah. You will see the first part of the dome being opened, which we use also to check how the weather is. Unfortunately, but the weather is not brilliant tonight, but being astronomy, there's a bit of moon there probably. See, just about see the moon. But astronomy in the city is obviously cloudy, as it's tradition. After we open the first aperture, we then roll up the shutter. Yeah. You can hear, sorry if it's a bit loud, but it's a rather heavy piece of machinery being moved. You can see the slit in the dome being opened through which the telescope can observe. And again, the aperture is minimal, so only to allow the telescope to look outside, but not any weather to look in. And crucially, again, to maintain the air around the telescope as stable as possible, so no turbulence can affect the quality of the images. I think that sort of highlights the principle. Apologies for that. Second, and possibly the most important part of the telescope, is the mount itself. It makes for the majority of the instrument itself. We see two pillars, the north one right here and the south one. As it says in the tin, those are pointing in the north-south direction, allowing for the telescope to rotate effectively with the sky and to follow the movement of the sky as the night progresses. So then, obviously, when we take a picture, when we take an image, it won't look blurry or traily, because the telescope is perfectly following this movement. These pillars are particularly solid, and if anything, look a bit oversized compared to the telescope itself, because these have been built in 1982 for a much heavier telescope that was previously mounted on this mount. In 2013, we proceeded with an upgrade of the telescope, and we substituted it with this rather modern and snazzy looking telescope, maintaining the sizing of before, but reducing massively the weight. This has only had the effect of increase the quality of our images, given that, again, such a massive mount is the pillars literally on top of which good quality imaging relies on. It's a very stable mount and allows for no vibration to be transmitted to the telescope. These pillars go all the way down to the ground, so then no tremors can be no tremors from the dome itself and from the flooring can impact on the quality of the images. Without further ado, now we're gonna move to the telescope itself. Again, it's a carbon fiber structure that contains two mirrors. The primary being here in this black structure, and the secondary, you can just see it within that cylindrical structure over there. For the keynote view, the design of this telescope follows the Richer-Chrétien design. So it's two hyperbolic mirrors that allow for better quality of imaging, in particular reducing some optical aberration, particularly off axis. And so, despite being among the more complicated mirrors to be manufactured, it makes for greater images. And now all modern, particularly big professional telescopes, follow this design. The design. So the Richer-Chrétien label sort of suggests the shape of the two mirrors. The design itself of the telescope is a Cassegrain, and which is particularly useful given its compactness. So we can achieve significant focal length in not a particularly big amount of space. The focal length of the telescope is 8. Sorry, the focal ratio is 8 for the one of you that are interested in technical details. But the telescope itself is only occupying roughly 2 meters in length. So the primary mirror, I might have forgot to say, is 0.5 meter in diameter, and it's housed underneath those flaps that we will open for you in a second, so you can see part of the mirror. If you can imagine an ideal ray of light coming through the top of the telescope, right there, it goes into the primary mirror, bounces off to the secondary, enters the tube that you see there, and hits the focus, which is where our camera sits. The camera is a CCD, which uses the technology that all modern cameras have, including the one, well, in my very phone and even your phones. It's particularly compact, and it's operated at a constant temperature of -5 degrees centigrade. This allows to reduce thermal noise and, again, improving quality of the images. This, as you can see, there is no cooling attached to it other than this tiny little device that uses this so-called Pelletier effect. It's electronically cooled effectively, using a very neat effect of thermocouples. So if you apply a voltage to a specific material, you will end up having a surface being particularly cold and the other surface of the material hot. So you need to just dissipate that heat, and you can obtain rather cool temperatures, so -5 in this case for our camera, without needing particularly fancy cooling. It can be water cooled as well for increased performance, and we are working on this upgrade as we speak, literally. The other bit that you can see in this configuration is the filter wheel. So in this housing, we have an array of different filters that are used to, as the name says, block out unwanted radiation, electromagnetic radiation, and sort of isolate only specific bands that we might be interested in according to our science case. So we can only focus on bluer part of the electromagnetic spectrum or redder part, or use very, very specific wavebands such as
the one associated to hydrogen emission if you want to particularly study one science question. As always, I'm Italian and particularly verbose. I'm happy if any one of the experts, including the director, has anything to add to this brief journey around the telescope. I'll in a second go through to see whether there are any questions already from the chat, or if you have and if you have any curiosity about this instrument, please feel free to ask, obviously. But yeah, and as we actually was mentioning about the tracking, so the telescope is able obviously to follow the movement of the sky just by solely rotating along its main axis, which is again the north-south. You see and hear probably the constant churning of the cogwheels that keep the very precise and very minute movements going. So then the telescope exactly can keep following the movement of the sky. So I think I went through the main things I wanted to say. Obviously, yeah, one thing we can switch off, we can switch out instruments. We have again a CCD camera touch on at the moment. We can attach spectrograph if needed be, and if the science case requests or requires so. But yeah, it's quite easy. The design is quite easy and allows for quick interchangeability between instruments. Other things that you might have seen in the mounts are the counterweights, allowing for the telescope to be balanced and kept safe, so then it doesn't swing around hitting people in unwanted places. That sometimes might happen, hence the high visibility tape. I'm happy to pause for a second and look whether there are any questions in the chat. We can, as we do that, we will swing the telescope to a different position so you can see its range of motion. But to do that, we need to go to the control room. So follow me.
We should rotate the dome as well. We should point first and then.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, good point. So we'll see the telescope being moved.
All right. So what would you like to point at here? Look at Andromeda.
Should look at Andromeda.
So let's type it in here.
Yeah.
Andromeda Galaxy.
Yeah.
Display.
Yeah.
Sure, yes, I am.
As you can see, and hear probably. Oh yeah, you can see on the controls we see the movement of the position of or where the telescope is observing, and accordingly we see it moving to its new position. And now it's homed again to his new position. So it's quite a quick movement. We can adjust it very precisely, even manually if needed be, in case the pointing is not perfect. But again, it's a very easy way to do astrophotography effectively. We do receive very envious comments from passionate astrophotographers. With such a device is particularly easy to do the job. Yeah, absolutely. Another very noisy part of the process is follow the movement of the telescope with the dome.
Of course, you can only see it here.
Yeah. So now you can see it's a bit disconcerting probably, but the whole top of the dome is currently rotating. We are working on an upgrade to synchronize the two movements, so then the poor astronomer doesn't need to freeze, as we are currently doing at the moment, and can operate the telescope from the control room very happily. And so you can see that the dome is moving. Yeah. We're currently almost there. Very glad the Birmingham Football Club is not practicing tonight, otherwise it would be flooded by lights as well. And as you can see, we are reaching alignment between the dome and the telescope. And as you can see, this would be granted if the telescope would point slightly a bit more upwards to avoid the horizon, but this would be the configuration through which the telescope can observe fully. So this is kind of a rundown of what it takes to make this telescope functional. I promised it, and now I'll do it. I'll read through the questions. I'll interrupt the video feed here and switch to this. I see.
I can see a question from Finn, so I'm very happy to pass on to the experts. Hi, mate. I'm very interested in astrophysics. Do you have any idea about how I can learn more or get involved in looking at your telescopes?
All right, well, I can say some stuff on behalf of AstroSoc here, I guess. I mean, if you're really interested in astrophysics, there's quite a lot of stuff in Birmingham you can find, especially on the internet, to help you out. We're not the only astronomical society, though obviously we're the best, I think, personally. And with our telescope specifically, I don't necessarily know how close you are physically, but we do quite a lot of activities with our telescopes. I mean, as for Astro in the City, hopefully next February our event will be in person, and that means that we'll probably try to have an observing night after the talk, so you can come to that if you want. We also have a number of events that we run at the Society where we do observing. We actually have a telescope workshop tomorrow evening, as it happens. So if anybody watching is in the area and wants to come, then if you check out our Facebook page and stuff to find out where that is. But yeah, if you want to learn more, get involved, well, check out the rest of this YouTube channel that this is being streamed on. And if you want to have some more resources and stuff sent, then message our Facebook page or put a comment on and we'll come back to it later.
I'll also like to add something to that. If you're very much interested in astrophysics, it might be a good time to just get started with some observations using a good pair of binoculars. You can get a really good pair of binoculars on Amazon or something like that, and you could observe Jupiter and Saturn with that. I remember one of my first experiences with observing was literally from the balcony of my apartment, like back when this was like several years ago, but I used to like just stand in the balcony using a pair of binoculars, look at Jupiter, and I could see Jupiter's moons as well, so the 4 largest moons of Jupiter. And you could read more about Jupiter's moons online as well, because this is also a great time to view Jupiter that's visible. So that's a great way to get started. And I will also drop links in the chat to AstroSoc's Facebook and YouTube pages, as well as any other handy links I find online, so you can go through them as well. And you can find books about astronomy in libraries and stuff, so do have a look at them. They have pretty pictures with descriptions.
I'll add as well that now is a really great time to be getting into astronomy, because like we saw at James Webb, we've got loads of exciting stuff going up right now. We're going to be getting pictures soon, and it's a really great time to be looking at things. And I'll add as well that, yeah, you don't need any fancy equipment. You can just go outside and look up, and provided there's no clouds, then you'll see some stuff, some planets, definitely. And also, if you're around Birmingham as well, there is a planetarium at Think Tank Museum, and that's run by an astronomer as well. So you can always go and have a look in their planetarium there. And of course, when we get back up and running, come and see our little planetarium here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And again, in terms of this very telescope, I want to reiterate, we're trying our best to sort of like bring it or make it accessible again to all the keen participants to astronomy in the city. So hopefully next time around in February, when the next event will be run, we'll be able to bring people to the telescope. And well, if the weather allows even take observations. On the use of this very telescope, I saw a question in the chat from Shaz asking about whether we can use it to image exoplanets. Anyone wants to take in this? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so with this telescope, we can't image the exoplanets directly. For that, you need something with a very high spatial resolution and something to block out the light of the star. What we can do is observe transits. So if we had a bright enough star, we could use this telescope to take repeat images, and as the planet passes in front of the star, you should be able to detect, if the weather's good and you get your exposure time right, a little dip in the light as the planet passes in front of the star, and it re-brightens when the planet reaches the other side. So by seeing these transits, you can work out the orbital period of the planet around the star. You can then work out how big is the planet if you know how far away from the star it is. So yeah, this is absolutely the kind of stuff that people will do with a telescope like this. And some of our colleagues in the department who work in exoplanets are quite keen that once we finished our upgrades to use this to do some exoplanet science in the not too distant future.
Thank you very much. Sorry, thank you very much for the question and reply. I see there are quite some questions from John. We can start. So yeah, from a question regarding what kind of exposures do we typically use? It depends on the science. If it's a transit on a fairly bright star, it could be seconds, fraction of seconds even, up to deeper fields, hours even. So it really depends on the science case that we are after. And again, tailoring this exposure according to the performance of the telescope itself. So making sure that we don't oversaturate the sensor with photons, which then would ruin the whole image, or making sure that we have a good control of what then the background level is, because with such a sensitive instruments, we need to take care of these quantities in particular. Hence why we keep it cool at these temperatures, and it's shielded this way, and we operate it only in dark sky. So even when the moon is up, we tend not to look too close or to the aerial skies too close to the moon, because they will be flooded again by photons of the moon. So it's it all depends again on the science, but there is a lot to take care of to not effectively waste this resource. There's other questions such as narrowband filters, how narrow? I wish I could remember the bandwidth of the H-alpha filter. I don't have it on top of my mind at all, but it's, yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
It's very narrow.
A few angstroms probably.
Yeah, it could be a reasonable number. I don't have it on top of my mind. We do actually, another question from John again. How often do we do calibrations? We tend to do them, so flats and biases and darks, we tend to do them all the times we come to the telescope, before and after observations, to be even more consistent, especially if the weather conditions are a bit variable. In particular, sky transparency, or the amount of clouds that we have on the sky in Birmingham, is not great most of the times. And so it's often we have thin layers of clouds, even when the sky looks quite transparent. And so the sky brightness effectively varies quite a lot. And so having a good calibration that would allow to then remove this effect of the sky brightness from our observation is quite crucial. And so given that we have this instrument to our disposal, we are particularly pedantic and try to take very frequent calibrations. So then we can, again, extract the most amount of information from this instrument. I'll move to YouTube quickly to see if there are any questions there. I hope I saw a comment regarding the quality of the audio. I hope it got better after the first troubles, and it got easier to listen.
Esther's got a question.
Yeah, there's a question from Esther. Hi, would it make more sense to have the telescope more away from the city? Also, how often can you do the observation when it's so cloudy in this area? Thanks. I agree. on the second part of the question. On the first part, happy to leave it to anyone that wants to say something about the pollution, light pollution.
So one thing is that when the telescope was built, it was what, 1982 or something like that. It was a lot darker then, and this felt a lot further away from the city. So I think back then you got really dark skies here. Unfortunately, since then, obviously the city's expanded, and also Birmingham City Football Club have built their training ground essentially next door. So unfortunately, we couldn't have predicted that back in the 80s. So yeah, we would love to move this further away from the city, but unfortunately, that would be quite a monumental task.
Yes, it's funnily enough, I think, well, possibly not anymore, given that the technology in light illumination has changed, but it was a common problem in the past while using, for instance, a spectrograph to see line emissions from the gas used in the light illumination of the streets. So it can be quite detrimental and fairly visibly as well. And so, yeah, the light pollution is a particular problem. Light pollution, as it turns out now comes from the sky itself. The amount of satellites being launched into space has skyrocketed, literally, and the pun was intended. So we will unfortunately see more and more tracks of satellites across a vaster and vaster portion of the sky as these campaigns are continuing. So the astronomers, despite being a bit of a niche, are particularly affected by this issue. So it's getting more and more challenging. Hence why the bigger infrastructure are built on top of mountains these days, effectively, in fairly remote areas where light pollution can be more minimal. I see, yeah, just to comment quickly on John's question about the 2-hour exposure I mentioned. Indeed, often it's not a one single shot because of some of the problems that you've quoted, and also potential problems with the tracking. It's good, but not perfect. Hence, it could lead to, like, again, trailing with such an exposure time. So we usually tend to have shorter exposure, which we then combine at the end. Another question from Shaz, if it's possible to see anything tonight. It would if it wasn't for clouds, which we were hopeful in the afternoon. It looked like it was clearing up, but the situation is evolving quite quickly, especially here in Birmingham, which is also why we are trying to make this telescope operational from remote, so from campus, so we can use it even more often. But risks of fog and rain, which are particularly perilous for the functioning of the telescope, make sure that it's often easier and safe to have a person here on site to make sure that no water or anything else is entering the dome. I want to read this question because it's very interesting, from Keenan. I am 6 years old. Can we see HD 100546b through the telescope?
Well, should we check if we can point at it?
We surely can. And let me switch again to my handy phone camera for a second. Hopefully you can still see.
Okay, so Matteo, you have to remind me the name.
Just a second. Okay, this source is HD 100546b.
So this is an exoplanet we're looking for?
It's an exoplanet we're looking for. We cannot cheat code through the name, unfortunately. We need to go through the coordinates.
Okay, you got the, I guess I can open the browser.
Meanwhile, as we try to work out that, I'm happy to read some other questions. Again, I'm on YouTube looking for any other. Let me see. Again, I take the chance to remind you that you can ask any question you feel like, or any curiosity you have regarding astronomy. It doesn't have to be on this on this telescope alone. It could be on anything. The expertise we have in this room, virtual room, but it's quite broad, from gravitational waves to the ultimate space telescope. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And no question is considered stupid. So we are very open and very happy to answer all your curiosity.
It's just been very slow trying to get the coordinates of this star.
We are encountering some minor issues.
Just
We-
very slow internet connection. That's all.
Yes, John, I say yes to your question regarding the focal length. Shaz, can you see nebula using the telescope? Yes, and it's always a fan favorite. This telescope is particularly suited for those nebulas, and we can obtain quite spectacular images of those. In particular, if you look into our Twitter account, there's a pinned tweet of the Orion Nebula that we taken a couple of years ago in 3 filters. So it's a particularly beautiful, colored image that was taken at this very telescope. If anything, I'll try to show it to you live.
Got some bad news, I'm afraid, about HD 100546b. It's too far south. We're not able to see it from here. Have to be in the southern hemisphere to get a good look at it.
Sorry, Keenan,
Sorry
for
about
that.
Yeah.
And this you should be able to see the shared screen. And this is an image that was taken of the Orion Nebula with the Spheric telescope. It's a 3-color image, and it's very spectacular indeed. And similarly, other famous nebula, Tarantula Nebula, Flame Nebula, planetary nebulas are very accessible with this instrument. And it would have been among the targets that we would have chosen for you if the sky would have collaborated. But we can hope for future spots of sunshine. I see a question from Jane, just to say excellent presentations today, and I can only agree with the comment. I know how I now have an understanding of the James Webb Telescope. I'll be getting binoculars out later. I'm impressed by the observatory. Thanks. So I'm very happy to read this comment to all the experts that helped us tonight. We are particularly happy that people are grateful and interested in this talk, and it's a pleasure for us to provide you with these presentations. And yes, schools in normal circumstances are allowed to visit this instrument, but there's been a lot of changes to things, and so as we try to resume service, we'll make sure to consider also schools for activities here. I've see that the time is also running fast, so I'll suggest for the attendees to post either here again or on the YouTube channel any questions, any last questions before we wrap up the event of tonight. I'll ask
I think
if
we've got
anything.
2 questions in the Q&A.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So from Natasha, when looking at an astrophotographic camera, what specs are recommended?
I think I can answer this on behalf of the absent Oscar, who unfortunately has another event that he can't miss this evening. So I'm not much of an expert on astrophotography, but Oscar is really big into it. And if you ask us again later through Facebook or through YouTube or somewhere, I'm sure he can give you some very good advice on that. So I'm sorry you couldn't.
You could also send us an email if you'd like.
Yeah, that would also work.
Excellent.
I'll just type the email address and the answer to the question in a bit.
I have a question from Finn. Will the James Webb be able to look at black holes?
Yeah, I suppose I'll take that. So actually, that's a really, really good question. James Webb is actually joining forces with another telescope called the Event Horizon Telescope, and they're going to work together to look at the supermassive black hole in the center of our galaxy, Sagittarius A star. So yeah, it's going to contribute towards lots of being able to look at black holes and all sorts of stuff out there. Obviously, it's limited to infrared, so whatever debris is given out in infrared, but we're hoping that it can work in conjunction with other telescopes to tell us much more about black holes, amongst many other things.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'll look for. How about the Cat's Eye Nebula? Thank you, Keenan.
Okay.
We'll try to see whether that would be in range.
This one might get recognized in our system. Let's try it out.
And
Okay, it knows this one. Let's see if we find it on the sky. It is in the northern hemisphere.
it is reachable, so we shall slew the telescope.
There's no risk material. It's also smart enough to do it. All right. So we'll point at the Cat's Eye Nebula now.
It's almost there.
Let's just double check this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gonna check the weather here.
And there it is, pointed where the nebula would be.
No, unfortunately, it is still cloudy outside. I can't see any stars. So what we'll do is our telescope's smart enough to be able to simulate an image of where we'll be able to see if it wasn't cloudy using catalogs of the sky. So if I click on this, okay. Why is it doing an exposure?
It's pretending very well.
It does very well, doesn't it?
No, it's the way it operates.
Okay, excellent. So it's set for a 1 minute simulated exposure here. So it'll be another 45 seconds or so.
But this is actually, you are actually seeing it's a bit less romantic as one would imagine. But yeah, the whole operation of the telescope runs through these two panels, one that controls the camera and one that controls the mount. And it's a very dry affair of clicking on very explicative buttons such as take photo. And it's very easy. It's not as romantic again, but it does the job.
Right. You can see here where we would change the exposure time, for example. We can change the binning and the CCD. And that's the kind of stuff we can do with our camera.
Yeah, and you see here the light means the type of image we are taking. So light means science. So the actual image, what we can switch to the calibration frames that we were talking before. So in case biases or darks. And by magic, if the internet collaborates, we should obtain an image of a simulated image, let's say from this telescope. In a second, so bear with us. Other controls that might be interesting for some. We have an internet problem. Apologies.
Yeah.
So that didn't work. We tried a final firework, but it didn't work. We apologize for that. Just to show another control panel here, which is which allows us to change the focus of the camera to make sure that the images are crisp and indeed in focus. I'll stop here for a second,
move here, and see whether there is any final question for the experts. From Shaz again in the chat, didn't Sagittarius say star ignites similar to a quasar several million years ago?
So we don't know for sure, but people think so. Yeah, we think that most black holes during their lifetimes probably go through these phases of quasars versus quiescence, or at least the supermassive ones, the centers of galaxies do. So Sagittarius A star is not doing anything at the minute, which is good for us. But indeed, yeah, there's some evidence from hot gas outside the galaxy that maybe that this 7 million years ago was an active quasar and probably was shooting some jets out of its poles, and those switched off sometime in the past. So it'd be very bright if it switched on again, but we should probably hope it doesn't do anything too dramatic.
Agreed. One last check on YouTube. I don't see any new questions. So if so, again, I would really like to thank all the participants to this very lively session. We are very happy to have you all here tonight. Very happy to see you all very interested in the topic, and hopefully we're again we will hopefully see you live soon. The next event, which the date has still to be confirmed, but we're considering mid-February as per tradition. So keep an eye on the usual channels. In a second I will ask Anwesh and Simon to again plug in the AstroSoc information, so to keep everyone up to date. We will send out the usual information through our Facebook, through the University of Birmingham Observatory, and Facebook and Twitter, and the mailing list that you can find if you're not already subscribed on our Astronomy in the City website. So yeah, roughly we're talking again February for the next event, hopefully in person. Once again, on my behalf, thank you. Sorry, if there is any additional remark again from Anwesh and Simon, please.
I think we have a final question in the chat.
Oh, thank you. From Chad,
Right.
can you acquire energy from black holes?
Ooh, tough one. I mean, black holes certainly can release a lot of energy, like in the earlier question about the quasars, and the energies that these things release when they're accreting matter from other sources is absolutely enormous. Now, to acquire that energy, if we wanted to use it, we'd have to get uncomfortably close. So most of this energy comes out as X-rays close to the event horizon of the black hole. So to trap that energy, you'd probably need a very big X-ray detector. You need to put it really close to the black hole. So I wouldn't want to be the one that tries. They also have a lot of rotational energy in these black holes, but as far as I know, we haven't thought of a clever way to try and tap that sort of thing either. But the problem really is that most of them are just too far away. We'd have to travel a very long way to the nearest black hole before we get close enough to be able to even try out any of these things.
Thank you. Again, well, I'll thank you. Yeah, thank you again to all the participants, both on Zoom and on YouTube. And again, a big thank to all the experts with us tonight. In particular, also to well, Oscar that is not with us currently, but to Natalie as well for the very interesting talks that they prepared for this event. And also thanks to the other experts for providing their expertise and their help tonight with us. Thank you again. I hope I hope you you will spend a pleasant night after this event, and I'll hope to see you all soon. Goodbye.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.